guys, welcome to the gun shop with me, John. This is Nick Horton from Langstone Wildfowlers again, and today he's going to try and teach me a little bit about duck calling.
Very much a crash course, and certainly the tuition that I've done in the past has sometimes spread over weeks because there's quite a bit of technical stuff.
I look forward to being an entire amateur
to get your head around. So, if you just think back to what we said in the last little episode about what you're what you're aiming to get that reed to do.
Yep.
You want that large volume of low velocity air travelling into that end of the call to make the reed vibrate in as big an arc as you possibly can. The more of that deep bass note that you get to it, the better.
And before I blow on it, is that arc, is that done by different pressures of air or different volumes of air? As it progresses, you'll kind of feel that for yourself. It's easier for you to experience it rather than me try and describe it. So, back to basics. If you hold the call like that in the web of your hand, now what you'll see me do is get hold of the other end of the call, and when you put it to your mouth, if you can imagine that you're drinking out of a soft drink bottle. Yeah. What you do not do is put the whole thing in your mouth. It's as if you're drinking from a bottle and you don't want it dribbling down the side of your face. I will hold it in place like that. That's only because, particularly if you're not used to this, you tend to get movement in your in the hand that you're holding with, and that varies the pressure. Okay. So anything that you can do, you're sort of locking it to your face with your offhand
to keep the pressure of the call on your face and your mouth constant, then holding it with that second hand.
Is this effective if you wear gloves, or is the noise exactly the same?
I often wear a left-handed glove when I'm wildfowling, and I don't wear a glove on my right hand. I just stick it in the jacket pocket, because you'll struggle to blow a short reed call or a duck call with gloves. It just muffles it completely.
And this is a mallard call.
This is the mallard call. Yep. So hold it in the web of your hand.
Yep.
You use this other hand to hold it to your mouth embrasure as if you're drinking from a bottle.
Pressing it on my face, or
Not
just
pressing,
kind of
just
holding
hold it there. Yeah. Again, the bottle analogy works very well. However hard you press it to stop the liquid running out the side. So I'll kind of leave that to your discretion, or you know how many pints you've had when you're drinking from the bottle.
I'm a bit of a dribbler, Nick. So
okay.
Does it matter the orientation of the reed in there?
No, it doesn't matter.
No, okay.
It matters no. Good question, but it doesn't matter. So let's think about putting that first breath into the call. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just to expel some air from your diaphragm. Remember, just find your diaphragm by going and if you just go,
I've never been this nervous in a long time.
Just for the sake of the argument, just keep that, open that hand slightly, just keep it still for the time being. And remember that you're going now, when the first time you did it there, did you hear that slight rasp that you got?
So that's overloading.
No, actually it was because although you were blowing a bit harder than you needed to, you got the depth. You produced the air from far enough down in your diaphragm for its velocity to have dropped, even though its volume was more than adequate, and that caused the reed to give that big vibration, which was the. Don't worry about my hand movements. That's instinctive. But you don't need to worry about that at the moment. I can see that you're still producing air from quite high up in your lungs, and you're going like that with Donald Duck.
Yeah.
This is the biggest hurdle to overcome. It's getting used to producing the air from right in the base of your diaphragm. So again, cough. You're getting there.
It's I don't know, different, isn't it?
Yeah. You're producing the air still from the top of your lungs. Okay. Previously, you were producing it in your throat. So probably with a few more minutes or hours, days practice, you will eventually get it right down to the bottom of your diaphragm, which is where it needs to come from. But already you're making good progress.
Okay.
Just for the sake of the argument, because we haven't got forever to do this, what I will do is just talk you through some of the other facets of it, so that you've just got some idea in your head where it's kind of going. Once you've mastered the air insertion,
so I'm guessing it's probably the hardest bit to overcome.
It is. Once you've mastered that, you need to think about chopping off the beginning and the end of the note, because otherwise you end up with instead of.
So it needs to be fairly flat or continuous. It's not a build up and slow down like a human.
No, it's a single expulsion of air through the core. Again, if you listen to a duck, that's exactly what a duck does.
Yeah.
You can actually watch it. You can watch it going. It's producing the air from its diaphragm, and it just opens its mouth a fraction.
Excuse what is about to be a really stupid question, and I'm hoping the answer will be yes. If you go to a park and you listen to normal mallard duck,
yes,
that is exactly the same noise as a wild mallard duck.
Oh, absolutely.
So you could sit there and practice calling at the park,
occasionally,
and it wouldn't be time wasted.
No, not at all. It was an excellent idea.
Or a pet duck.
Even your pet duck.
Yeah.
In fact, if it's a duck that quacks, it doesn't even have to be a mallard, because most of them are mallard based, and the sound that comes out of them is identical.
Yeah.
It's only other species that produce different sounds. Widgeon and pintail whistle, they don't quack. And teal make a very different sounding quack, but let's not get too distracted. So, I'll give you these as sort of mental pointers for the future. If you think of the reference word when you're forming the individual series of quacks, if you think of the word quit, Q-U-I-T. Now, in order to make the sound of the letter Q, if you practice this later, what you have to do is you have to slightly inhale so that you've got sufficient air in your lungs to expel to make the K sound, but you will instinctively, you don't have to think about this, you will instinctively close the back of your throat, because the Q sound is quite explosive. It's a K. K works, it's just that the word quit is easier to spell and more grammatically correct.
Quack.
So, yes, that's how you start the note, and Q-U-I-T has got a T at the end, and the T you finish with your tongue making that sound at the end of the note. So, put it all together, you get
So it's the lungs working with your tongue. Your tongue actually has to do something.
Exactly. When we get on to, again, kind of honing down your technique, what we'll look at is your tongue position in the mouth. And it should be like this. You put the tip of your tongue at the bottom of the back of your teeth. Like that.
Yeah.
Simply like that. And if you make the sound... And if you'll see, because my diaphragm is quite well concealed by an elderly paunch, but you can see when I go, you can see my diaphragm moving. So again, one of the next stages in adding to the complication of the thing is to think about that and how that relates to putting the air into the call, and you get so I'm piling this onto you at the moment.
It's all very intense, but this is just for you.
Yes, you'll get definitely get information overload. But if you just try that tongue, see what happens. That's just practice. The more you practice that, the more you tidy it up a bit, and the more you employ your diaphragm, the more you lower the air that you're producing down into the base of your diaphragm.
I'm guessing you do it without thinking about it whatsoever.
Yes.
It just happens, and
Yeah.
I'm currently
trying
to think of 17 million things at once.
Exactly. So the initial part of the learning process, sadly, it's often what turns people off, because I can't do that.
Yeah.
But if you break it down into bite-sized chunks, you certainly can.
Well, it is a musical instrument in its own right, isn't it?
It is. In its simplest form, you've hit the nail on the head, it is a very simple musical instrument. So you'll need to devote a little bit of time, effort, practice and thought to mastering it.
Do you ever record yourself, or did you ever record yourself and listen back?
Only because I'm a technophobe, but I've known people who've done it and it's very successful. I wouldn't know how to and don't have the wherewithal. But yes, that's an excellent way of doing it. Even more so, particularly with modern computers, if you can kind of watch what you're doing, because it's very easy once you pick up the traits, if you like, to determine where, for instance, you are producing the air from.
Yeah.
I could see right from the word go that you were up here instead of down here, and you too will develop the same ability to figure out what the person's doing. And if it's yourself, then you can correct it.
Watching someone shoot,
Yeah.
I can pick up most
Precisely.
things.
Yeah.
You can see
Yes.
what they're doing wrong like that.
And perhaps just to sort of conclude on,
Yeah.
we'll just have a look at another part of the calling repertoire. Often if you've got birds working into your decoys, you've called them from a distance with some of the louder hail type calls, you've got them working towards you, you're working on single quacks just to keep them interested, and as they get close, let's assume that perhaps stopping calling at that moment in time is not appropriate. What you can do to encourage them right in, if they're a bit decoy shy, is to go on to the feed chatter, and that is simply and all I'm doing, again, producing the air from the diaphragm, I'm going tick, 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 think more tick, 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 tick.
Just with more air.
Yeah, that's halfway there.
Yeah.
And it's ticka, 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 ticka. You did it too fast to begin with. You were kind of over vibrating, but just ticka, ticka, ticka. That would work. It's a bit ragged. There's room for improvement, but as a first crack, I'm very encouraged. I think some people get this and some people don't. Some people really struggle with it, but I think because you understand it, might even be something to do with my teaching.
I would hope so.
And because you know where you want to get with it, you're making very good progress, considering we've only been doing this for 5 or 10 minutes.
So, I did have a question, but I've completely forgotten because I feel so amateurish and my head's still thinking about how I need to get myself cool and sit there and anger the wife by sitting there and phone.
Well, I'm going to have to say this now. Do you appreciate that these are MPK custom calls?
We'll put a link below in the description. You endorse them, and
yes,
from listening to you, they sound like ducks. Listening to me, they don't. But
where I'm going with this is that often people will say, a good caller will be able to use any duck call. That's not actually quite true. If you buy a cheap duck call, it will sound like a cheap duck call. That's simply because of the materials that it's made of, the tolerances that it's made to, and all the sort of usual technical stuff. So my advice would be, if you're interested in proceeding with this, get a decent call to begin with. It will. What
would you recommend as the first call? I mean, you have a next
yes.
worth of.
If you're looking at coastal wildfowling, I would recommend a distance call. It needs a little bit more air put into it, but it is significantly louder, as its name implies. It's designed to work over a distance. A general purpose call is ideal for most coastal wildfowling situations. I mean, the environment that we're in at the moment, I mean, we're out of the shooting season now, but that would be the call that I would be using in an environment like this. It's got a good volume.
If you've got a flight pond or something like that, this would be ideal.
Absolutely ideal. That would be my first choice for that, and my recommendation, generally speaking, across the board.
Perfect. Thank you very much for my
my short lesson. I need to get myself a call and practice.
Been a pleasure.
And I'm presuming it's one of those things you can practice wrong, so I'll get you back to...
I'd be only too pleased to. I get a great deal of satisfaction at the end of the day when someone starts from not knowing one end of the call to the other to becoming an accomplished caller. It gives me a great deal of personal satisfaction, plus the fact, particularly when we're talking about wildfowling, anything that makes people better wildfowlers when they're in the sport and makes them want to stay longer, as a club chairman, that works for me.
Brilliant. And one last thing I remember my question, is it better to try and learn, I mean, before we were talking you showed a fair amount of different calls, different sounds and things like that on this little machine. Is it better to master one sound, or is it better to try and be average at everything?
Yeah, yes,
do you need a repertoire, or is it better to be an amazing quacker?
Once you've got the basics down, the rest of it will follow.
Okay.
It really is. It's like a one-trick pony. You know, once you can produce the air and put it into the call correctly, the world is your oyster. There's all sorts of trick stuff you can do with it if you want to. But from a simplicity point of view, 3 or 4 different calls and that's it. It will work on ducks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That's all from us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Don't know if I heard of Canada in the distance then or not. Perhaps I imagined it.
They do come up the river.
Yeah.
Just about.